So as women who employ others, we're aware. But it's changing the rules of a club that has been in existence for hundreds of years. So how do we do that? One, it is have the conversations and do the research. There are so many tools out there to go in and figure out what is standard for salary in the role that you're in. Talk to business owners.
Think finances are dry and intimidating? Not in this episode. Meet Michelle Taylor, leukemia survivor, financial educator, and founder of the Women and Wealth Initiative. She's here to bust the money myths, close the gender wealth gap, and help you build the kind of financial confidence that buys more than stuff, it buys your freedom. Whether you're a boss building an exit plan or a mom budgeting for summer snacks, Michelle's story and smarts will give you the clarity and courage to take control of your financial future. Let's talk about real money moves. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here with you.
Now, your journey is nothing short of remarkable, from fighting leukemia at 17 to launching your own business at 27. What inspired you to create the Women in Wealth Initiative, and how has your personal experiences shaped your passion for financial empowerment?
Wow. Okay. So I was raised by very amicably divorced parents. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom, when they got divorced, went back to work and went into retail. And so I saw two very different views and approaches to money. And growing up, I knew that I wanted to have the entrepreneur route just because my dad seemed to be having a lot more fun in life. And, my mom taught me so much about how important it is to pay attention to the little things, and also empowered me to say, don't ever go after somebody to give you the life that you want. Go after the life you want. And I am so thankful for that. But neither of them were really talking to me about money. So fast forward, I'm 17 years old, never had a cavity in my life, and suddenly am faced with a very serious diagnosis of leukemia. And I was very fortunate. I went right into remission, but I did the whole thing. I lost my hair. I went through chemo. And in that, kind of lost my sense of identity just because it was so jarring. It threw me off my axis a little bit. So when I graduated from college, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and it took me a little while to get there. I started off in different majors and made the shift. But when I graduated, I started making terrible financial decisions. And, hindsight, as now a real grown up, I know that I was trying to fill that cup that leukemia had kind of emptied for me. So I learned very quickly how to get out of debt and how important credit was by a lot of bad mistakes. And so through that journey, and then deciding on the business that I wanted to go into and getting into that, the experiences and the men that I encountered were not necessarily doing it intentionally, but there was definitely a sense of a little pat on the head, like I was just a girl trying to run a business. And it just shaped so much in me around what I wanted to do to change that. So fast forward, now I am here. I've been a licensed advisor and consultant in this space for 11 years, and Women in Wealth was born out of need and necessity for women that didn't get the education that they needed, that want to do better, that want to build a story of success that they define, and having a place to ask the questions and have the guidance and mentorship that isn't as accessible to us as maybe our male counterparts.
First of all, wow, how inspirational your story at 17. And it really changed your perspective on, I imagine, everything. So thank you
Everything.
for sharing that. And secondly, as someone who has also made and paid, as my husband says, all the dumb tax with making money mistakes and doing things a lot wrong with money, I'm really excited to chat with you and kind of unpack that and what it looks like for women. And I know you've worked with CEOs planning exits to moms navigating a budget. Let's talk a little bit about how do you define wealth for women and what are some of the most common limiting beliefs you help them overcome? Because I know for myself, I've had tons of them in making and saving and investing my money. So I'm sure that's pretty common for women. Ready to lead smarter and invest wiser? On the Executive Connect podcast, we unpack executive strategies for wealth and influence. Hit the subscribe button now. Don't just watch, act.
It is so common that it is upsetting every single day. And, sitting down with people, and like you said, wealth and success are going to look different to everybody. And that's part of the beauty of the journey, right? We all are exposed now to so much more than in the past. Everybody has a soapbox on social media. And so often we look at what others are building and may fall into those patterns of saying, well, if I don't have that, it's not success. And I'm so passionate about changing that narrative. So, for some women, it may just be being able to stay at home with their kiddos and pour into that part of their lives. For others, it may be to fly private, and it all is okay. So, first and foremost, giving each other the permission to write the story. And what I think wealth truly boils down to, cutting all of the fluff away, is getting to a place where you look at money like a tool and that tool provides you options. That saying, money doesn't buy happiness, and it doesn't, but man, it makes life easier. It gives us the options to pivot, to fix a problem. And I want everybody to have access to that. And so oftentimes when women are coming up, and through their youth and teenage years, not only just with money, but we are taught, don't talk about things that aren't proper. We don't want to talk about money or politics or religion. And in that, we kind of shrink away from the money talks that guys are not shrinking away from. We believe that we're told all the time that we're not as good with numbers, that we are not or we're told to be more conservative, be nurturers. We're supposed to be the ones that make everything okay, so it's not as safe to take risks. We're more conservative when we do take risks. So my goal is to change that narrative, find out the root of women's money stories. For so many people, we equate money with greed or not good people. And if you're a good person and you've struggled or your parents have struggled, and then you're in a position where you have more money, it's like, oh, I shouldn't keep all of this. What have I done to deserve it? Or look at the people that are not in this boat. And we just need to change all of that, because the reality is women do good things with money. And so the more money we have, the more good we can do, the more impact we can provide. And it all starts with the conversations we're having with ourselves, rewriting the money beliefs that we have, and the conversations that we are exposing the other young women in our circle to. Whether it's nieces, daughters, goddaughters, best friends' daughters, we all just need to do better and change the conversations that we're having with each other. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm blessed to have amazing girlfriends in my life. And I can tell you that oftentimes when we get together, we are not talking about money or what we're doing to grow our wealth. And it's so taboo. And it starts there. How do we start having those conversations with the people that are going to give us grace and there's no judgment involved?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, let's talk a little bit about strategy because I know my strategy in my 20s and even before my 20s was to save enough money so I could buy a house. And the older I got, the strategy has pivoted. And so I want to talk a little bit about what practical tools or frameworks do you recommend women who want to take control of their finances, whether they're getting started or already running a business? Because I know I hear kind of what you were saying, a lot of women that I know, they don't invest their money. They buy Louis Vuittons. They might buy luxury items that have some kind of potential resale value, but it's not stuff that's going to continue to grow like, a piece of real estate or other investment vehicles. So let's talk strategy. What's the scoop?
So, when women are just starting out, it's so important that they understand their numbers, understand what's coming in, understand what the purpose is, and then give it a job and deploy it. Something I talk about all the time. I love the idea of giving yourself, instead of a budget, which just feels restrictive and icky, building out a spending plan. Give yourself permission, set the world on fire with an X amount of dollars, give everything else a job, live in an and universe. You don't want to be saving or spending or putting towards debt or investing. You want to do all three. So, how do we break that up and stay true to the goals that you're working on? Secondly, I would say whether you're just starting out or you are more experienced and well versed, you want to always be auditing your personal board of directors. And that's something that I've spent a lot of time within my community, Women in Wealth, helping women do is, who do you need at this stage in your life? And then what are the questions that you ask those women? And then get them to your table. Because, like I'm sure you can attest to, when you get to a certain level, surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you becomes more and more important. Those like unique creative strategies become more relevant and harder to research on your own the more successful you get. So, when you're just starting out, know your numbers. Pay attention to all facets of wealth building, not just one. So, live in an and universe. And then as you continue to grow, I can't tell you the female founders and executives that I talk to that just sit on too much cash. And like you said, it's easy to go out and give yourself permission when you've got a lot of cash on hand to say, let me go out and buy that handbag I've wanted or the shoes. And I'm the first one to say, I love that stuff too. But what I would challenge any of your listeners to think through is building different streams of income. Passive income is your best friend. You want to almost think about recreating your income through other sources so that, God forbid anything happen, you're set. And how do you do that? And those are those conversations that guys are having on the golf cart courses or over bourbon. Start talking about them, sourcing them from people that are smarter than you, and figure out a path to get there, whether it's real estate, creative investments, oil and gas. I mean, we've talked offline about so many of these great things. Most women have the capital, but they just don't have the access to it. So,
Money Ripples is on a mission to help professionals just like you get their money working harder for you. Their clients free up an average of $35,000 their very first year without having to work extra hours. To show you how, they've put together a powerful training called Cash Flow Secrets, and the listeners of the Executive Connect podcast can get it completely free. Just visit moneyripples.com/secrets and enter the promo code EXEC.
Start talking to your friends and seek out women that seem to be doing the things you want to do.
I think that's such good advice. And it seems so elementary in the advice. But I think back to a time when I bought a house and I had a mortgage broker tell me because I was so young, I should do an interest only note, which I did. I'm like, this sound is great. I'm gonna have less of a payment, but I was so young and so naive. And And what I found out was that person made a higher commission selling that note to me. They weren't looking out for my best interest. And it wasn't until a friend of mine who was in that space said, "What the heck are you thinking? You're never paying off the principal." And I thankfully got out of it, but it was not until, Michelle, I talked to my smart friends that were doing the money things right about what I did. And it cost me several thousands of dollars to redo my mortgage had I just not got correct advice up front. And nowadays, it's so much easier with AI and technology and advisors and tools to get information than it was when I did this, eons ago. So it's such a good advice. And I want to pull back a layer. I've been reading a lot about pay gaps, building wealth. And I know you're very, 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 very passionate about closing the gap, the pay gap, and breaking down financial barriers. What shifts need to happen both personally and systematically to make real progress here?
So obviously, as a whole, we can only control so much of that, right? So as women who employ others, we're aware, but it's changing the rules of a club that has been in existence for hundreds of years. So how do we do that? One, it is have the conversations and do the research. There are so many tools out there to go in and figure out what is standard for salary in the role that you're in. Talk to business owners. If you're a business owner, find out what their margins are, find out how they're leveraging different tools to bring more home. How do you negotiate? That's something that's really important to understand. People going in to an annual review and hear, well, you're getting a 3% raise, they're walking away happy until they realize that inflation is even higher than that. So they're not even keeping up with the growth of money. So it's really just one, talking to each other and doing the research. To your point, Melissa, there's so many tools out there that you can do a research and find the answers. Here's the caveat to this that I think is so important. We can go and find more information than we've ever had access to before. But what's important then is to make sure that you're partnering with someone to vet that advice. Because let's take buying a home, like you mentioned. Even aside from that, so many people 5 years ago when interest rates were next to nothing, people were still so adamant about putting 20% down on the purchase of a home to avoid PMI. But that's because so many people were taught that. But when you then reverse engineer it and say, okay, but my mortgage interest rate is 2.25, I can take a bigger chunk of this and yeah, I'm going to pay PMI, but then I can invest this and make more. Like, it doesn't make sense. And it's just because you hear something doesn't mean it's right for you. So do the research. That's the only way to figure out what is the norm. Find out what the boys are doing, find out how much they're getting paid, find out how much the girls are getting paid. Like if you have a friend that's saying, yeah, I've been in this role and this is how much I'm making, ask her how much she's making before you're going and applying in the same space. That should not feel icky. And I think women in general have done a really good job of losing some of the competitiveness and I think we're really good at straightening each other's crowns, like people say, but talk to each other, ask the questions, because back to your question, there's only so much that we have control over. The pay gap is a slow and steep mountain to climb, and the only way to do that is to embrace the things that we have control over. And then as far as if you're a business owner out there, do better. As you employ women, make sure that you're looking and coaching them through. A lot of times, if you have someone in a space that's asking for more or wants to grow, give them some guidance to figure out how to get to the next step. Hey, get your license in this regard, and then let's check in 6 months. I mean, I think we all just need to be active participants and partners in this. to make the biggest impact as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I want to unpack something that you said that's so wise. I think a lot of times we're not running the numbers, and we're talking addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. We're not paying off our high interest rate credit cards, and we're spending money in other areas. So I think you're spot on with like the PMI and looking at what you're paying. What's that interest rate, and why would you pay a home off when you're really young? Well, maybe that's one of your goals, but what if you could use that money today that's going to compound over 30 years versus putting all the money in a house where you can write off the interest on? So there's so many different wealth formulas, but it's all comes down to the numbers and understanding the game on how to make those numbers work best. And saving money in a savings account and not paying off your high interest earning credit cards is not the right formula for, having long-term wealth and moving the needle. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's such an important point. You wear a lot of hats, fellow hat wearer,
Yes.
entrepreneur, mom, speaker, wife, all the things. How do you help women find the rhythm between their financial goals, their personal lives, without feeling stressed out, burnt out, and really just not doing anything about it?
Oh my God. I mean, I feel like this is a topic that women talk about all the time, and it's so important. So there is no magic bullet. I think for all of us to give ourselves the grace, no one's getting it right. And having work life balance, it doesn't exist every single day. I think the keys to it are having a crystal clear vision of what you're working towards. Not only for you as a single person, or as a family, or as a business owner, because it makes the day to day steps that you have to take a lot easier to digest. And I think really just the best thing that you can do is do a time audit, figuring out what you can do to give away things that are below your hourly pay rate. And then also hire the people that can help you, even if it's something silly like, I don't know, Instacart. Now, I am not somebody that loves that because I like to go and pick my own stuff, but I hate going to the grocery store. For some people, that works for them. And for that small fee, if that allows you to spend more time doing things that matter to you, whether it's in your business or as a mom or at a baseball game, then do it. Outsource the things that you can. And then I also just think that you have to allow yourself the wiggle room of pivoting throughout the day. Like I said, there's no magic bullet. And for example, you may set out on a Monday morning and think that you've got your day planned and you're going to be an A plus at everything. And I think the reality is you need to know that at the end of the day, likely you're either going to be an A plus mom, business owner, wife, executive, friend, and then maybe you're going to be a C in something else. And that is okay. And I think that we all just need to understand that the most precious commodity we all have is time. And that is what we need to figure out and do audits on frequently to make sure that each hat is getting the attention that it needs, but it's not taking time away from one of the other hats that is equally as important.
Oh, such good advice. I know one of the things I was frustrated with for a while as a mom was the amount of waste that was happening in my home. Just paper towels, food, water constantly running, doors open, constant waste. And it didn't occur to me until I started talking to the kids about the waste and explaining, taking them to the grocery store, letting them see how much the groceries cost. So when they eat half of a power bar or they waste a glass of milk, like how much that is costing. And it all takes away from them in some capacity because we don't have the luxury to do all the vacations, all the things. And it's amazing when we did that in our home, how, they're like, oh, I didn't use this paper towel, I'm going to put it back, or oh, I'll save this for tomorrow. And really getting your kids involved in these discussions is super key. And also what you're buying. The kids now, like I wanted, a lot cheaper toys than there are today. My kids now want tablets and cars and other things that aren't cheap things. And so having them understand that, yep, they can have a pair of Lululemon leggings, but they got to pay for them. It's amazing how much more they take care of their things and how much more they consider, do I really need those leggings? I have some other leggings. When you get them involved too young, they start to think about it, and it ultimately has saved our family a lot of money. Are you someone with a demanding job but tired of the 9-to-5 grind? What if you could build a profitable side hustle without sacrificing your full-time career? Our new partner, Book Profits, can show you how to turn your limited free time into a thriving online business. Learn how to find, sell, and profit from used books all on your schedule from the comfort of your own home. Not crazy tech skills needed and no major upfront investment, just simple strategies that fit into your busy lifestyle. Visit the URL on the screen for a free training today and learn more.
Well, yeah, and it allows buy-in. So let's say that I always encourage the women that I'm working with and anybody to have, like, we call them State of the Unions. So my husband and I have a State of the Union every quarter, kind of talk about what's coming up, what do we need to do, but involving the kids and making it a little bit fun and just saying, okay, guys, we're going to Italy this summer and these are the things we want to do. So we're going to start planning for it now. And it makes it, even just saying that when they're young and finding things that excite them. That way, when they're in the store and they want to do something, you can either say, you should save half of that money because you'll have spending money in Italy, or hey, I'm not buying this thing for you because we're going to Italy. And it's all about just exposing them to all of the things so that we're not helping them create a negative money story. Money is not a scarcity. It should be, in abundance, right? So, for example, when you brought up Lululemon, I mean, one thing that I've tried to implement with my kids is we talk about, putting money away and investing and taxes and all the things. But I started about 2 years ago with my kids talking about buying a piece of a company that they like. So even now, my nieces and nephews, I do that for them where Lululemon, instead of buying the leggings, okay, so this money you've saved, you got $500 for your birthday. Let's take $200 and go spend it. Let's take $100 and save it. The other 200, let's buy a share of Lululemon and let's watch it together and see what happens. And now you own a company that you love and you're emotionally tied to it. It's going to make it fun for them. It's all of those kind of conversations that we can be having to impact the kids in our lives now. Understand money, understand it's a tool. You need to be thoughtful with that tool. And not just for your benefit, but for everyone's benefit, like you with the paper towels and the half-eaten protein bars. Like, how does this happen in every household in America?
It's true. And, I think being honest with your kids, right? I think when I was very young, I was like 8 or 9 years old. My dad was like, we got to start saving for college for you, right? You got to get good grades. And so I was so young and my parents were in my ears about preparing for my future. So I ended up babysitting for some neighbor kids, and they had, he is a partner at an engineering firm, and he owned a multi-level marketing business back in the early 90s. And I watched him and how he was making money and saving money and investing money. And I decided to ask my parents, Michelle, to open me a savings account because I wanted to start saving money. And I had worked for this man from like 9 to 15. And every week I was working, watching their three kids in the evening after school and putting my money in my bank. And I was making, I laugh, like $1 an hour. I tell the
Yeah.
kids to watch their sibling for $1 and they laugh. They're like, I'm going to need 10 or 20. And, you
Yeah.
know, I started at like $1 an hour. And I got to be 15. I opened the newspaper. I picked out a car. I told my dad I want to buy that car. And he's like, how are you going to afford this car? It's $15,000. I said, well, I have the money in my bank account. My father completely forgot for X amount of years that I was putting money in a savings account. It was sitting in a CD, and all because the man I was babysitting for had taught me about saving money. And so my parents were blown away when I did this all on my own. And I did the same for my college. And when I came out of college, my first home was purchased by the money I had properly invested in college. And I worked my way through college. None of that would have happened had my dad and mom not been pretty transparent about money to me. So I was already prepared. A, B, I had, I'll call him my wealth dad that was teaching me very young about money. And so be honest and transparent with your kids and share with them, like you were saying, but let them buy the stock. Stock, go up, they go down, but over the term of their lifetime, if they leave it in an account for 40 years, wow, what will it do? And when you start young, it compounds a lot quicker than when you get older. So the secret is start, right? Just start
Yes.
doing something.
Well, and imagine, I mean, and as they get older, the doors it would open to have conversations around taxes. Like, hey guys, these stocks you'd have to pay taxes on, but if you continue to let it grow, you can give this to your kids one day. And then there's a step up in basis. So they don't pay the taxes, but in the meantime, you can leverage it and grow wealth in other places. And it's going to blow their mind. And I'm sure other parents out there do this, but I will tell my kids, like if they're eating or drinking something that I want, I'll take a little piece and they'll look at me and I'll say, pay your taxes. And so I always tell them, like, taxes aren't fun. There's tools around them, but start the conversation. And I love that story so much because not only did you have a wealth dad that was teaching you, but I think it's so important for the people listening to really understand that there are young people around all the time that you may not think you are having an impact on, but they are watching. The same thing for me. I mean, who taught me that I wanted to have the finer things in life was a family member that I, spent a lot of time with that had done really well. And I know as parents, it's always that fine line of how do we not spoil but still expose them to the opportunities. And I have to share a quick story because it was so meaningful for me. I'm in Florida and I have a niece that I joke and say she was my practice daughter. And she and I and her mom and another aunt went down to look at colleges in South Florida. And on the way home, that's where I'm from. On the way back through, we were driving and she mentioned she'd never been to Palm Beach before. And being from West Palm Beach, I said, oh, you've got to see it. It's so beautiful. So we stopped and her mom and her other aunt were like, this isn't real life. This isn't what FAU is going to look like. And she turned around to them and she said, you guys don't get it. If I don't see things like this, I don't know what's out there to work for. And I'm like, oh, mic drop, right? She's 17 years old and you cannot replace that kind of thinking with anything out there that you can grab. And I guess that's the biggest thing is talk about it. Talk about the goodness of money, the good it can do. Don't make it a negative. Don't talk about all the stereotypical we don't have it. We are uh, don't have the same thing as the Joneses. Talk about what you can do and what it's done and empower the people around you. Old,
Um,
young, girl, boy, it's up to us.
So true. So true. So many nuggets in that. Michelle, thank you so much for the honest and empowering conversation. For our listeners that want to connect with you and learn more about the Women in Wealth Initiative, where can they find you?
So I have an individual consulting practice for the people that are looking for one-on-one attention. And then, of course, Women in Wealth is my pride and joy. They can find the community on Instagram, women_in_wealth, or on the website, womeninwealth.co. And then I also have a podcast called Talk Wealthy to Me.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here today and giving us a load of information to think about, from financial confidence to redefining success. This has been such a gift to talk to you and learn from you. Thank you for being here with us today. That's the Executive Connect podcast.